Why do bones, gold, and masks say Agamemnon to him?
Well, he knows from ancient writers that Agamemnon and his people were buried inside the citadel. So he thinks, he just puts two and two together. He's got gold, he's got the graves inside the citadel, he thinks this is Agamemnon.
But time would prove that 2 + 2 didn't equal 4.
Yeah, what he found here were kings, but they were too old. They were older than Agamemnon.
The gold Schliemann found here was the first in a long string of discoveries at Mycenae. And archaeologists have since proven that this was the most powerful city in the area throughout the entire Bronze Age. That makes this the only possible location for the Greek kingdom Homer described. With the Iliad and the Odyssey as his guide, Heinrich Schliemann rediscovered Troy and Mycenae for the modern world. And generations of explorers have followed in his wake. Today, a new search is on for an island empire described in Homer's Odyssey. If this kingdom is found, it'll add a whole new dimension to the archaeological search for the truth behind Homer's stories. It'll mean the discovery of the home of Odysseus, the man who brought the Trojan horse to Troy and ended the Trojan War.
Few locations in the Iliad and Odyssey are as important as an island kingdom called Ithaca, home of Odysseus. New evidence suggests that the location of Ithaca may have been found as discussed in Homer's writings, here off the western coast of Greece on an island called Kephallonia.
Kephallonia lies in a small island group called the Ionian Islands. They lie at the very edge of a fault line between two tectonic plates. This is one of the most active earthquake zones on the planet. I'm here with Robert Biddlestone, who believes these earthquakes, maybe hundreds of them over the last 3,000 years, have hidden the location of Homer's Ithaca until now.
Right the way out to the sea there. Well, the most important description in the Odyssey of where ancient Ithaca is supposed to be is when King Odysseus announces his identity, and he says, "My island of Ithaca lies furthest to the darkness of dusk," in other words, furthest to the west. And when you look at today's map of this part of the world, you find there's an immediate contradiction. Because the modern island of Ithaca doesn't lie furthest to the west, it lies furthest to the east.
So the description that Homer provides of Ithaca, this kingdom, doesn't match the current island of Ithaca.
No, it doesn't. So there's a mismatch, there's a contradiction. And I thought to myself, well, why? Why would he get the geography wrong?
Biddlestone's theory begins with identifying a deep ravine separating the westernmost portion of Kephallonia from the main body of the island. He believes this ravine was once a narrow seaway that has since filled in with rubble from earthquakes. If he's right, then the island, now called Kephallonia, was at one time 2 islands. And the island farthest west was Homer's Ithaca, making the maps which today call another island Ithaca incorrect.
There was sea, we're pretty confident here below, but it got filled up by this process of catastrophic rockfall.
Wow, so basically everything that we're seeing in this valley was up there on the mountain.
Exactly so. Before there was any of this rock slide, we had a marine channel going right the way through. So most scholars agree that this place where you and I are standing right now is ancient Sami, but what they haven't been able to figure out is really where ancient Ithaca was, and I believe it was over there, across this valley.
Since Biddlestone conceived his theory, he's gained fantastic insights from NASA global imaging software called Whirlwind. With it, he's been able to hover over the island electronically and comb for clues in 3 dimensions. With the aid of these images, Biddlestone set out to find specific features on the western portion of Kephallonia that fit with Homer's descriptions of Ithaca, like this bay.
In it, 2 headlands, projecting, sheared off, crouching from the harbor, shielded from waves, whipped up by blustering winds outside. Well, the fascinating thing is that the description of the harbor in the Odyssey matches almost exactly what we see in front of us.
Like Schliemann, Biddlestone is turning ancient poetry into a hunt for historical truths. And he's confident excavations here will eventually prove he's right.
They row inside the bay. They knew the bay of old. The ship ran up the beach for half its length at speed. Such strength was in the rowers' arms. So we've got to have some kind of sandy beach.
Wow. Okay, so I see what you mean. We have sand.
We have sand.
No shortage of that.
From sandy beaches to mountain peaks, Biddlestone is hot on Homer's trail.
Athene is speaking to Odysseus. She says to him, look up there and you will see your mountain of Mount Neriton covered with waving foliage. And there it is.
To date, he believes he's identified 15 separate locations described on Ithaca by Homer more than 2,000 years ago. And each location is a clue that he hopes will one day lead to the palace of Odysseus himself.
So we have, if I can oversimplify, we have a treasure map with all these points on it, but we never had where to start.
Well, that's right. And the exciting thing is this. Everyone's imagined that the treasure map was a map of a mythical treasure island, that it wasn't a real island anyway. You couldn't even find Ithaca, let alone identify particular mountains or places on it. Mm-hmm. But now we've got a real good chance of being able to demonstrate that Ithaca is real.
What Heinrich Schliemann started, Robert Biddlestone will carry into the future. And in the years that have separated these two men, other archaeologists have made a wealth of amazing discoveries on the trail of the Trojan War. I'm on the trail of the Trojan War, following clues left by the poet Homer. I've explored two ancient cities at the center of the story. And on Kephallonia, I learned that earthquakes may have hidden one of the islands described by Homer. But finding these cities is only part of the story. I still have to find evidence of the people Homer described. Warriors clad in armor and equipped with the weapons of the late Bronze Age. I've picked up my journey in a town called Nafplio, where a pile of teeth have made the world of Homer come alive.
Yes.
Oh, hi, Josh. Pleasure.
Dr. Eleni Pelialogu and conservator Pinka Taratori have invited me to see these ancient remains. It may not look like much, but archaeologists recognized what they discovered immediately from the writings of Homer.
This is a big, big deal, and I want to explain why. Because in the Iliad, in Book 10, it says the following. Meriones gave Odysseus bow, quiver, and sword, and over his head he set a helmet made of leather. Inside it was crisscrossed taut with many thongs. Outside, the gleaming teeth of a white-tusked boar ran round and round in rows stitched neat and tight, a master craftsman's work, the cap in its center, padded soft with felt. Boar's tusked helmet. That's what we're looking at right here.
Here we have the cheek plates, which are made of bronze.
Okay.
And they protected the face.
So these would go like
this
that.
way, yes.
Ah, okay.
Using these fragments as a guide, Pinka made a model of how the helmet might have appeared more than 3,000 years ago.
That's what okay.
Without Homer's description, the fact that these teeth were actually a Bronze Age helmet might have never been realized. But with the helmet, archaeologists have proven an important historical link between Homer and the warriors he describes. More remnants of these helmets have been found in tombs around Mycenae, the Greek kingdom itself. And back at Mycenae, Dr. Pliatsika and her colleagues have determined that in 1250 BC, this city was the wealthiest and most powerful in all of Greece, like it was portrayed in the songs of Homer. They found relics of bronze, cast swords and arrow points, the same weapons of Homer's Trojan War. And they've discovered a society with a rich warrior culture, just like the Mycenae of the Iliad and the Odyssey.
We know that the people who were in charge of a group of soldiers were the heroes, were the bravest and those who belonged to a higher rank socially. They were viewing themselves as soldiers and hunters. What Homer says is that we've got warriors who are using this kind of weaponry, and these were people that were higher than the simpler folk who were working in the fields or as herdsmen.
So the fact that Homer depicts these people, the people of Mycenae, as this powerhouse, as we've discussed, that's actually pretty dead on.
This is an accurate picture. What Homer says is pretty accurate.
Archaeologists' discoveries at Mycenae have linked the words of Homer to the realities of a warrior culture still being uncovered today. Residents of this city in the late Bronze Age used the weapons described by Homer, from arrowheads to bronze swords to chariots drawn by horses. These chariots were the tanks of the Trojan War, and Homer describes their use in battle repeatedly. In Book 20, he sings, Achilles rampaged on. His sharp-hoofed stallions trampled shields and corpses. Axle under his chariot splashed with blood. I want to see one of these chariots for myself.
And we got one here, a chariot.
Formidable war machine.
Beautiful. And this is a late Bronze Age chariot?
Exactly. But
Tufan Toronli has reproduced a Greek chariot, matching both Homer's descriptions and artwork from the late Bronze Age.
How many riders?
2, a charioteer and a warrior,
Okay.
covered with leather outside.
Leather outside.
Wicker, I have wicker inside and leather outside. A charioteer running the horses and a warrior fighting.
Do we know if the warriors were using chariots as transport or as weapons?
We have records of showing that they were doing both getting to the field and also doing the war at the field.
So one person would be driving, and the other person, passenger, it would be their chariot, and they'd be fighting with, what do you think? Bows and
Probably
arrows?
bows and arrows
Spears.
and spears, and there is also a record that they might be getting off and then fighting with swords as well. What do you think? Would you like to have a ride?
We can go for a ride too?
Yep.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, let's get the horses in then. Arkadaşlar.
These horses have modern bridles, but the concept is the same. 2 horses, a driver, and a warrior.
Forward.
Granted, this is all new to me, but traveling at a gallop takes a little bit of getting used to.
All right. It's a bit harrowing. There's absolutely no shock absorption. So even on a field like this, which looks pretty flat, I could feel every stone that went under the wheel. But getting to the battlefield was only half of it. Remember, this is war. And in the Iliad, there's no shortage of depictions of gruesome fight scenes. People doing battle on the back of their chariots. Now for me, as a competitive archer, firing from stable ground, not that big a problem. But could it be done from the back of a moving chariot? Let's go find out. A low shot.
Even with a modern bow, this stuff's pretty tricky. Archaeologists are still searching for proof of exactly how ancient Greek warfare was conducted. Concrete evidence exists of Bronze Age chariots,
Okay,
arrows, and spears.
all right, here we go.
Debate continues as to exactly how these weapons were used in combination. But there's no doubt that they were deadly.
That's a flesh wound. Oh, I think that would hurt. I think that this shows that with the spear, with the bow and arrow, with the sword, the weapons of the late Bronze Age were incredibly effective.
So far on the trail of Homer, I've discovered the cities, the weapons,